Well, welcome to our October edition of our Kentucky K-12 CIO EdTech Leaders Webcast. I'm David Couch with the Department of Education. Thanks for joining us this morning. We have our districts with us and our OET staff. We also have that they're joining us by teams. And then on a YouTube link, we've invited our CATS partners and the 8 educational cooperatives. So welcome everyone. We also have Go Soapbox available, where we have questions that we would like you all to respond to, and also some discussion questions. If you can open those up, I sent those this morning to try to get some discussion on those those items, and we'll obviously be looking at things that percolate to the very top of that list. So I'll go ahead and get started with our agenda, and I'm going to start out with something that I should have covered actually the last webcast. I regret that I didn't do that. So I'm going to do that today. Is the State Education Technology Directors Association, SETA. We covered in the last webcast their survey responses of all 50 states responded to that. And so we asked similar questions of our districts. And I was interested in what your perspectives are. And what I failed to do last webcast is actually bring those up and discuss those. And I'm usually pretty good about the bringing the Go Soapbox questions up as we need them. But so I'm going to ask Marty to go ahead and show those. We have a meeting with all the other states in Indianapolis starting tomorrow through Thursday. This is one of the things I shared with my peers, the other 49 states, because we went over this when this report first came out. We went over it with all the CIOs, which is a different organization. The Chief State School Officers Organization, CIO Network, is a separate organization, but CETA, but it's related. These are we're like cousins here, and we keep up closely what's going on with CETA. And we definitely have our representative, Mike Lettingham, represents us for this. But I failed to do the comparison of the national results to our results, which I found pretty fascinating. So I'm gonna let's just go through some of those, Marty. That's first one up. You can see where the other 49 states. This is where they felt their top education priorities were. Education recruitment retention was at the top of their list, and addressing learning loss. And you can see in our state, at least from the folks that responded, is addressing learning loss was by far number one. Education recruitment, retention, and training number two. Equity, and I think the reason equity is so low, I would say, is because we've been focusing on equity for 30 years in education technology. So it's not a high priority. It's remained one. It's a core part of the birth of the Kentucky education technology system. All the things we do around equity of access and opportunity, from our contracts, from our design, from our product standards, from everything we do in the funding. It's always been there. So that figures why that is not, from education technology wise, a high priority, because it's just part of our core DNA of how we operate.
And David, I think it's if it's okay if I jump in. Yeah, I think as we wanted to really look at these questions and get this comparison. We do know that there's some differences in how the questions were asked and answered, and but that's all right. That's the kind of the approach that we wanted to take, is directly with our education technology leaders. And on some of these questions that we asked, we didn't give multiple selections. For example, we said, "Hey, pick your one." And that's a great comparison as we look at the CETA study as well.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, sure. And once again, I think this complements and gives a high five to what we're doing. If you take a look at the other 49 states, and obviously ours was in here, and we gave a different answer, is internet access, broadband access, is super high on their radar screen, still in their schools, and obviously beyond the school campus, which we've also addressed in a major way. But you can see in Kentucky, it was zero. And that's actually a tremendous compliment to what our effort has been over the past 30 years with internet connectivity. That it's not, it doesn't have to be initiative, because once again, kind of going back to equity, it's been part of our focus since 1992 and the birth of the Kentucky Education Technology System, KETS. The other parts of it, cybersecurity, don't surprise me either, because once again, compared to the other 49 states, and not to say that we are perfect and never do, but we definitely have a statewide view of that versus every district trying to survive on their own. And I can tell you with the states that take that approach, they have a very high percent, 80–85% of their districts, maybe up to 90, do not do well with that, just trying to survive on their own. And so that's always going to be one of the top priorities of folks, but it doesn't surprise me that it's less than we see nationally. And then what we see technology for, make sure we're making an instructional difference and learning difference with the technology that's been bought. That makes sense to me as well.
David, the reason that this was exciting to see come in, and it kind of pushes on several areas of emphasis in our KETS master plan. We've said for a long time, in partnership, working together from the Office of Education Technology at the Department of Ed with our school districts and our leadership teams in our school districts, if we can continue to take care of and work on our shared services and make sure that they're as awesome as they can be, then our districts can focus on the parts of our instructional technology, our education technology that directly impact students and teachers. And so you get to focus on, at the district level, the things that are most important for your kids and your teachers and your families. So this was really exciting to see come in this way.
Yeah, let's go to the next one. Yeah, this was this is one of our master plan areas of emphasis. Obviously, are we maximizing the use of the things that we bought? And part of what we do every year, I know we're going to talk about the data that we just collect in the annual digital readiness survey. We also get a top 5 feedback from you all, and this is from a statewide level that helps us get some insight on what we're doing effectively and not effectively. But also, I know internally that is something that's important to look at and take an evaluation with, especially with the amount of money that has been spent on education technology during the pandemic time and before it, and obviously still the federal funds and the state funds that are available to go toward it over the next 2 years. Anything stand out to you there with Marty? I think so. Yeah, we can go on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is interesting to me. Is so my equivalent in the other 49 states, or their equivalent staffing, their OET equivalent staffing, say that EdTech priorities are important to their Department of Education. I can tell you, we answer that as very important. We obviously, this position that I'm in has a direct report to the commissioner, which, to be honest with you, you can see from these other stats that very few states have that, unfortunately, and it's buried down a couple of different levels. It's just not one. It's in most other states, it's 4 or 5 positions way down the line, which doesn't surprise me. It's not a priority. So we asked you from your point of view, and is it a priority to your district leadership? And it's good to see 85%. We got it up that high, and I hope for the other 10%. That actually is a yes, but we don't know. Yeah, that's true, James. Comment there. Yeah, and we spend it, and this has a lot to do with our statewide approach to doing things since 1992 versus everybody trying to survive on their own and do completely their own thing. So that's good to hear that, at least from your point of view, that we do with the shared services thing, do some things there. Yes, obviously there's always work to do in that area.
Yeah, and we actually took the opportunity to combine a couple of these questions into a single cybersecurity question. And we have a couple areas of emphasis in our master plan again that push on cybersecurity, and we want to continue to get better. And I love how you always say, David, that it's not that we're 100% perfect, but we continue to look for growth areas and in ways to better support. And that's that feedback that we continue to get directly from our school district leaders, and this is great to see.
Yeah. Let's go on to our next one. Yeah, and this is looks like around 80%, a little bit more than that, report directly to the superintendent. And you have less than 20% that don't. And you can see at the national level is very few of my peers report to the commissioner, and it's not high up on the radar screen EdTech. And I can tell that when I'm going to the meetings I'm going to Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Thanks, Marty.
Absolutely.
So Dee, let's talk about the school report card release and everything related to data.
Okay, the school report card did open up today for public release, and it is, has had a few issues. It's a little slow this morning. Some of the data within the card you'll see shows things like data not reported or data not available, and that is not true. It is actually available. If you sit there long enough, it will actually render in time, and Bright Bytes has engineers that are working on that. So when you actually see the school report card, the accountability page is what has changed the most. And you can kind of see here, we went to a dial look, and this is what we call the California model that the legislative branch has decided that they feel like is a better way to show the data. And we actually have a new accountability model this year. So you see the elementary.
I just want to clarify, this is the Kentucky legislature that wanted this. This wasn't national. This wasn't California. This was our own Kentucky legislature that pushed hard for this.
Right. So you see the indicators that are included in accountability separately at the elementary level, the middle level, and the high school level. Those all roll up to be these overall indicators. And this is the state look. But if you looked at your district or your school, your district level, if they support K through 12, will have all three of these. But individual schools will just show one, or whichever one is relevant to that school. So it is color coded. You can drill into explore more data and get more details and see the specific subgroups and how they align. So it is something that's a new look. And we would like to say that hopefully very soon it will be a better experience when you're out there. The collector tool is opened again. So that tool is where you would enter data. So if you're finding there's information out there that you've entered that's not, not what you thought it would be, maybe there's a technology item that you're seeing at one of your schools that's not right, you can go in now and fix that in the collector tool. Superintendents can update their message. That will be open through the end of this month. So for anything, and also the school profile reports are available. They can actually print those now from the public site. They appear at the bottom footer of the page, but they're also available to be printed in the collector approval tool that you've used prior to public release. So the other thing that kind of goes along with the school report card is the school profile report. The school profile report was due in the local board offices by October 1. So you might want to check if you've got a school profile report for each of your schools. If not, those do have to be signed by the site-based decision-making councils, the principals, and the superintendents. So sometimes scheduling and getting those all the signatures takes a little bit more time than they are allowed through legislation. This is another legislative requirement. And those reports are already available at the bottom of the page unsigned. So that's also a requirement that they be available. One thing that we need to ask the tech folks to do is to make sure that their school report card links are updated, to make sure that when they click from their schools or from the district page that you're actually seeing the 2022 card come up. You can actually default it, but when you're going and trying to align it to your district or your school specific, it's always got a year to it. So each year you need to update that. The information will need to be shared with parents as well as shared in a newspaper at the district level. So make sure you're working with your superintendent and you're aware of how that's going to occur. So that's kind of it on the school report card. We did ask a question, and it's an open-ended question, but if you've heard some comments, and not, a lot of the district folks have already had access to the card through the embargo period. If you've heard some feedback, let us know what that is. It's a lot easier for us to kind of slate that and kind of look at that and look forward towards next year on changes we want to make if we're getting feedback from districts that are using the card.
And just a quick mention, Dee Dee, you mentioned you asked a question. So just a quick mention, we didn't push on it earlier at the start, but join us on Go Soapbox. The direct link is in the chat, and we do have several poll questions. We have some discussion questions that we'd love to get your feedback on, and then also a reminder that you can ask any question you want, and we can bump those up. But we have a couple starting to roll in, and the feedback so far, the response is pretty good.
Great. So do keep in mind that this finance, if you get questions about why the finance data isn't out there, I did hear from a few finance directors last week and say, what have I missed? What am I supposed to do? That always lags. We wait for there to be audited financial data available. That doesn't tend to come available until the spring. So you'll see another launch with the financial data in May. And so the Office of District Support works directly with the financial officers in March and April to get that ready. So more information will come out then. Just a couple things while I've got the speaker. I'm going to just mention that the Office of Civil Rights Data is soliciting some additional feedback on public comment. The public comment period ends the end of October. I would say if you're making any public comment, you should say there shouldn't be any changes for 2021 because that year's over. But there are some proposed changes for 2021 reporting. So take a look at that and be prepared for civil rights data collection to open up in December is what we're expecting at this point in time for the next reporting period. We do have some trainings coming up. I didn't have high expectations that a lot of you were going to know about the parchment training that's going to happen at University of Louisville. That does happen November 3rd. We would like to get a really good representation of high school counselors there. It's an opportunity not just for them to know more about parchment, but also an opportunity for them to meet with registrars and admissions counselors from post-secondary schools across the state to see how important it is. The high school counselors' work is to the universities. And
so
the
result of that question, if we could, on Go Soapbox for those that.
Marty, you got that? You want me to?
No, I'll pull that up.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is we do have Infinite Campus Interchange. This will be at the Omni in Louisville on December 1st and 2nd, so that's coming up soon. Encourage folks to take advantage of that. We do our mid-year training in January, which is January 12th is the tentative date on that. If there's things that you really are hearing folks say that they really need more information about, always reach out to us. We like to kind of gear our training towards things that are needed across the state. So those are just the things I had to David. So I'll turn it back over to you. Marty's going to pull up that question for us. And I'm looking at it right now, and it looks like 83% don't know. There we go. And we've got 5% saying yes, they know their high school counselors are attending, and some of them are no. Maybe there's restrictions on travel or something like that. It's not something we can record. It's a very interactive event where there's panels that represent all the different groups and all that kind of stuff. And the Council for Post-Secondary Education will be there too. So it's a big event, and we're glad to be able to host it again in Kentucky. It's been a couple of years, probably more like 3 or 4 years since we've had one.
Well, thanks. Thank you, Dee Dee. Right. Next up, I have Neil Arnett from KISTI, and I'm wearing my KISTI swag today. Go KISTI. So Neil, please give us an update on KISTI.
Hey, thank you so much. KISTI always appreciates our partnership with KETS and OET. It's always great to be able to join with you guys and have all of you at KISTI, so we're super excited. So coming up, of course, we've got the Fall KISTI one-day event is going to be November the 4th. And actually, I just spoke with our registration vendor, and we have extended registration through the end of today. So if you have not registered yet, there are a few seats left. This event was capped at 600, but there's a few seats left. If you've not registered, jump on over to kisti.org. And you can get registered. If you have any trouble with that, you can, of course, reach out to me, email me, and we'll make sure and get you signed up for that. It's going to be an awesome event. This year's theme, our president, Mary Ann Rankin, picked this year's theme as Adventure Awaits, as you can see from our logo there. And the Fall Base Camp is going to be an awesome event where we're bringing together all the roles from building administrators to instructional leaders, technicians, CIOs, DLCs, and library media specialists to really have a discussion around how all those roles are enabling deeper learning across the state of Kentucky through EdTech. And so there's going to be an awesome panel discussion that morning. And then there's going to be, of course, a library media specialist breakout in the afternoon. DLCs are going to break out. New CIOs are going to break out and have some discussion, as well as a state technicians meeting and training for new technicians, because we know we're working on the people side and getting a lot of new techs that have never worked in K-12 before. So it's going to be an awesome time to bring everyone together. And of course, we have our very own Making It Happen award winner, Dr. Marty Parks, going to keynote and kick the day off for us. So we're excited about all of that. So make sure you register by the end of the day. We've extended that a little bit longer, but we've got, of course, get those lunch counts over to Central Bank Center. We're going to be in Lexington for this fall event. It's a little bit of a move for us, and that's a great facility. If you've been to STLP, it's an awesome facility. So we're going to be there at Central Bank Center on November the 4th, and we're super excited about that. Do y'all have any questions about fall event?
See if anyone
KDE.
Yeah.
Just a couple more plugs. Go ahead, Marty.
I was just going to say that's awesome to hear that registration is so high, and just a few seats left. And I know that our field staff have been encouraging lots and lots of folks to, especially the attention on getting folks engaged into Kentucky K-12 education technology. That's our emphasis right now, and that's where we are, especially as we're pulling in some new folks, which is exciting.
Yeah, of course, we've got over 200 DLCs are registered for the event, which we knew was going to be a huge group, and we love our DLCs all across the state. And we're also excited. We've got a great group of technicians that are registered. Our CIO session is great. Our library media specialists are the second largest constituency in KISTI, and they're coming out in force for the event. So it's going to be an awesome day to connect everybody together. Just a couple more plugs from KISTI. Of course, spring event is coming up. Our president, Mary Ann Rankin, has an absolutely awesome spring event planned, but of course that is dependent on you all submitting sessions. So please make sure that you get your sessions submitted, your proposals, by November 1st. So November 1st is the deadline to submit proposals to present at KISTI. We always have an amazing lineup of educators and technical folks from across the state of Kentucky doing presentations. So please make sure you get those submitted by November 1st. And technical folks, we're always looking for great technical sessions. We can only make KISTI as technical as the sessions you submit. So we're looking forward to some great tech sessions out there for that. Outreach grants are open up to $10,000. Last year, I think we gave away 8 or 9 $10,000 grants. Those are open right now. Those are due by December 1st, as well as our Impact Awards nominations are open right now too. So everything's going on. KISTI is going full speed ahead. We've got things firing in every direction, and we love partnering with all of you guys.
Neil, if you see it, Blue Bruce said when trying to register, it says it is closed. So
I just reached out to them. They closed. They cut it off this morning, and I said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to make a plug. So so if you have trouble, we're turning it back on." I reached out to our vendor. I said, "We're going to turn it back on. So we're going to make a plug this morning and give everybody a chance to grab those last few seats. So if you have any trouble by the end of the day, just email me and we'll make sure and get you in."
Yeah. And I agree, it's a good event, obviously, with everything with Kisty's high quality and high payoff, and the venue's outstanding, as you said, Neil, is what we saw with STLP. I think if the folks if they've not been there, they really like the venue that they have there. So thank you, Neil. Thanks all that you do. They need someone that, yeah, I think they have someone that was miking. So you can take Neil off spotlight. Yeah. By the way, I did want to, with the school report card, we point a lot of folks for open record requests to that. The agency does, along with the information that's on Open House and Kentucky Stats. And so that's just a resource that you also can use. So if you have just someone asking researchers or media, that's also a good resource. That's already there. You don't have to create something new. Okay, Phil Coleman, our Chief Technology Officer and Division Director. Once a year, you kind of give us an update on the DDoS and Internet Health reports. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do the health report first. I think I've got a slide that, Megan, you can pop up. Great. What I really, kind of want you to see is, and this is something that's we always keep an eye on. We have about 200 gig. Well, we do have 200 gig of internet access, but right now we're using and averaging about 80. But the important thing about this slide is if you look over the last 28 months, you'll see, a big increase, the first part of the chart, and then we kind of level off a little bit. And that's the first time I think we've seen this in the history of CATS. And then you'll see the June and July that are almost nothing. So the uptime also, not just how much we use, the uptime of that service is very important to us. So, and we always look at that year to year and make sure that we're making improvements. So this year we have over 50% of our school districts that have had 100% uptime during instructional hours. So I think that's up by about 18 school districts over last year. And we only have one school district that is below 99%. And that's an increase of about 10 school districts over last year. So we constantly look at this and we constantly try to make sure that we have not just enough bandwidth, but we also have good uptime. And then we lay a whole bunch of security stuff on top of that. And if you'll go ahead and switch to the next slide. The one I like to talk about is our DDoS service that we have. So this is for September. And what's important about this is we had 96 attacks, and 96 of those attacks, all of those attacks, 100% were mitigated automatically without you, the school district, having to do anything, and without us having to do anything. And that happens within just a few minutes of the start of an attack. So that if you let those attacks go on unchecked, then you have looks like 22 hours of instructional time that would have been disrupted last month alone. And if you look at that over a period of a year, I don't have that slide, but we have 1,038 instances or attacks. And out of 1,038, we mitigated automatically 1,028 of those. So we had 10 that we weren't able to mitigate for one reason or the other. But I just want to share that because there's a lot of things that go on besides bandwidth and besides uptime, on your network. And we want to keep you safe, but we also want to make sure that we have we take care of our responsibility of being a good internet neighbor, to not only to the school districts within Kentucky, but to the whole internet community. So you're muted, David.
You said that I want to make sure I just clarify something you hit upon.
Okay.
The district didn't have to do anything. Maybe OET staff didn't, but our partner that provides that service did. So I know we have our partners that are watching, and this is a great service that we have that's done extremely well. So I'm going to give a high five to our partner for having this service in place.
And you know, we always talk about this at the beginning of the school year because that's when they all happen. And if you look back, you know, during the summer months, we didn't have any, or very, very, very few. But you know, as soon as school starts up, we start having, you know, big numbers again. So,
and I think it's worth mentioning. Hey, this is Bob. I'm going to cut in here real quick. That you know, we had close to 100 this past month, but just a few years ago, we might have 100 or that many across an entire year. And so the number of these attacks has increased just by a huge number, a huge percentage. And so it's really money well spent to protect ourselves from these attacks.
Our biggest attack this past 12 months was 303 gig. Keep in mind, we only have a 200 gig internet pipe. So if it had not been mitigated, it would have been impactful to every school district in the state. It would have completely shut it down. So it's, you know, some of these things are really small. Some are large. Last month or September, it was 49 gig. Well, that's significant. That's a fourth of our bandwidth. So, and for every school district, if they were getting that kind of attack, there's, you know, it would have shut them, you know, that particular school district down for sure.
Is there anything else you want to hit on there, Phil?
No, I think I covered it.
Good. Well, thanks for that update. And obviously, I'm going to be talking about something a little bit later on about a Herald Leader article that not pleased about and very inaccurate. That your chart and some other charts that we have provide evidence that they're way off in what they the article that they put out. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Next up, we have a birthday boy, Chuck Austin. His birthday present that I gave him today is we scheduled the webcast for today, and he gets to speak about any topic he wants to, but he's going to talk about the Security Baseline Project.
Thank you, David. So, you know, several months ago, guys, we started on a journey, and I will say this, and I'm going to ask Bob at times and David to chime in. But part of what we've got to help continue to coach and teach our end users is the importance of obviously securing their identities. Okay. And I will say that, you know, the Security Baseline Project that we started on several months ago, you know, it's one part technical and it's another part behavioral, because obviously there are things as technology leaders that we have to put into place to enable people to secure their identities, things like MFA. But then there's the communication and the adoption, all right, of our end user community to embrace that. So, you know, several months ago, we started the implementation of what we're calling the Security Baseline Project. We're 102 districts into what we call the enablement phase. And for those that have yet to go, you know, it's been a multi-pronged or multi-phased approach where, you know, last year around this time, we made a purchase at the state level of licenses that each of you would have deposited into your Office 365 tenants, known as EMSA3. And then we engaged with Microsoft to provide the assistance, or shall I say, teach you how to fish for those that hadn't already done this. And oh, by the way, let me stop right there. There's a lot of districts that had already and were well down the path of securing their identities and enabling the functions like MFA, all right, to their end user community. So hats off to you guys. But we wanted to make sure that everybody had that opportunity. So the licenses were purchased. There was an engagement with Microsoft. And, you know, for the 102 districts that have been through the process, there have been, small group IT readiness sessions, one-on-one training sessions. There's a secure score session that's being scheduled and implemented now, which allows people to go into the Office 365 administrative console just to see other areas that they can improve on when it comes to cybersecurity. So really and truly, what I wanted to share today is just to remind folks, especially those that are struggling, okay, that, every Friday we have an open office hours session for anybody to be able to ask questions if you're not sure about something. And you also have an opportunity to schedule a one-on-one session if you don't feel comfortable bringing something up in front of a group. Additionally, for the districts that are going to roll in the November-December timeframe, we're going to extend the open office hours sessions through the month of February to make sure that those folks have ample opportunity. And last but not least, there is a post-training assessment survey that we really encourage everybody to complete. And here's why. And I know surveys are a pain, trust me, I get it. But what those surveys help us do and help the Microsoft camp do is identify those that still may be struggling that need additional assistance. So if you can, get those filled out. We've got other metrics that we're looking at, but we want to make sure that everybody is successful, okay? And probably, the last thing I want to say, and this is where I'll kind of, cue up David and Bob. I love to listen to Bob coach us up as a state, as our CISO about, technology security. And Bob makes the comment that we're in a race. And I think as it's Cybersecurity Month, I think when you look at all that Phil has talked about today, the breaches that we've seen, the attacks that we've seen, the sooner we get folks to protect their identities, all right, the safer they're going to be. And we've talked about the opportunity maybe to set a deadline of end of this fiscal year, June 30th, for all of the adults across our K-12 community to have these security functions applied. But I hope folks can recognize, it's a race against time. The quicker you do this, the more secure you're going to be, the safer you're going to be. And we really want folks to take it seriously. And where you need help and when you need help, please feel free to reach out through your CATS engineer, reach to me, reach to Bob, whomever, if you're struggling with just communications or what to do. This is something we're going through ourselves within KDE, as David and Bob will speak to. But David, that's just a real quick report and really kind of a sense of urgency for folks to recognize that we really don't want to see any of our EdTech leaders, none of you, be in a position to where your district is breached. And you've got to sit across the table from a superintendent who looks at you and says, how could we have stopped this? And all along you've had the tools and you've known how to fish, but maybe you just haven't had the time or you needed some additional assistance, which we want to provide. That's all I've got, David.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck, and once again, happy birthday. I'd be remiss not doing it. Thanks for all the good things that you do for us.
Thank you.
And I think your point is a good one. And we've had incidences to where there's been a cybersecurity incident in a district. And then the superintendent goes, well, how could this have been prevented? And actually the district already had the tools available to them. They just had not implemented them. And that's not a discussion you want to have with your superintendent. You had something right there that's available, just not to you, but every district, and your district didn't implement it.
I totally agree with that. And if I could jump in real quick, there's a key point here that's happening kind of before our eyes, and I want to call it out because it's so important. I think everyone kind of recognizes that, Bob Hackworth isn't the only person talking about security on this call and on a lot of our webcasts. And I think it's important for everyone to recognize that, Bob isn't going to make everybody secure, but we are going to make ourselves secure. It's a team effort. It's a huge team effort. And, I would say to all of the districts out there listening, as we are rolling out MFA, now is a wonderful time to kind of help coach all of your staff up on how to be a little more secure and why we're rolling this out. And a lot of the materials that we provided were to help you kind of help educate your folks in your district about why we're doing this. You know, we're not just adding one more thing. We're trying to build a culture of security, a culture of cybersecurity mindedness that will help all of us be more secure. Because I guarantee, you know, you're not the only person as CIO, DTC, technology staff. You're not the person who's going to make everybody secure in your district. You can help them out. You can push them in the right direction, but they have to kind of help and meet you halfway, or maybe even a quarter of the way, whatever it takes. And it's not going to happen all at once. It's going to be over time. But if I've been in this position 10 years, and if I were the only person still talking about security on this webcast, we'd be having a lot of different conversations than we are. And I really appreciate everybody here at OET for backing me up and understanding the issues and risks and moving forward, and especially David, who's really championed the issues I've brought up. And with that, I'll just say happy birthday, Chuck. I think everyone who speaks probably should say happy birthday, Chuck. And of course, ready for questions or comments.
Happy birthday, Chuck. So David, I'd just like to add real quick, you know, it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. That's been mentioned, but it also is DigCit Commit Week. So there nationally, we kind of target, actually internationally target a week. And one of the core components of digital citizenship is exactly what, Bob, what you just defined, is all of us becoming, you know, one of those components to be responsible and empowered while connected and online with our devices, with the web, with apps, is to be a cybersecurity aware citizen. And that's exactly what you defined. It's a great connector. And it's just one of those components. In order to be empowered, we have to own it, exactly how you just said. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Bob. Do we want to show?
I'm going to steal the mic one more time, because we got some great discussion going on right now out on Go Soapbox, and I really do appreciate John Eastep throwing that question out there, because I think part of what we continue to look at the enterprise level, at the program level, is where we need to be long term in terms of end user experience and efficiencies. Okay, and you know, everybody's doing great stuff right now, and to be honest with you, everybody's doing great stuff with what they have available. All right. However, what we want to be able to deliver long term, specifically around the conversation of identity, all right, is a much more efficient, a much more tightly integrated experience that still allows people to go and do what they need. All right, but also provides some efficiencies on the back end to all of our IT administrators in the areas of user administration and things like that. So there's a lot more to come in that conversation around the connected user experience. But I do continue to appreciate the dialogue and the questions that folks throw out there, which are evident of some real fragmentation we've got right now that we've just got to continue working through.
Yeah, can we put up questions 2 and 3, because they were kind of related to what we were talking about there, the Digital Citizenship Week, which is another thing I would say is part of our DNA, and we were one of the early adopters of that. Going back to the late 90s and through that time frame. So it's part of our DNA. And it's something, obviously, you know, that we ask about every year in the digital readiness.
That's right, David. It is a part of our core DNA. Love how you say that. Great to see that 57% of respondents right now are obviously on track and implementing different strategies that gear towards our statewide and local DigCit commit, our commitment to digital citizenship. Another 20% are kicking it off now, which is fantastic. This is a great week to do that. And we're not talking about extremely challenging or difficult implementation. It's taking a step forward for awareness for our students and for our teachers and for our families. Jeff Sobolski just dropped in the DigCit digital citizenship badge. We all know that digital citizenship is the tie that binds a lot of our academic standards work in technology and library media, and also computer sciences. And so that's another connector. And 23% are not yet. And so this is really good feedback. Thanks, David. I'll go to the next question.
Yeah, let's go to this. This is multi-factor authentication. I know this is an area that we are in the midst of here in the agency. It's gone out well, but we know we have districts that have done this for quite some time. I think there's 80, 90 districts that have already done this.
And this is a great question, goes right back to what Chuck was talking about earlier. We want to make sure that we identify any of the issues that folks might be having to, once they go through the initial rollout and Microsoft has come in and KD's been there and all that, you know, the next big step is actually enabling MFA for all your users. And I'm heartened to see that we've got a bunch of folks either who have already done that out of this project or are planning on it. And then for those folks in that 36%, you know, we have a question on down at Go Soapbox where we're asking for folks to help us understand what the concerns are, and if they're having any problems. I think we
need somebody on mute duty.
Yeah, we got to. And so if you are having issues, or if you're not sure how to go about rolling this out to your staff, or if you're having problems with that, if you've got a hump you've got to get over and you're not sure how to do it, please kind of reach out to us, and you know, we can kind of connect you with Microsoft, we can connect you with other districts, we can connect you with our own best practice, and maybe help get you over that hump. We just want to make sure we're not leaving anybody on the table, if you will, as we move forward with this. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we have, we're kind of going by different offices here in KDE. We give them 2 weeks to do it on their own. If they don't do it on their own, then they are forced to do it. And so they can pick their right timing, do within that other 2 weeks. When we hit that certain part, then they don't get to pick their timing. They can't get to X, Y, and Z until they do it. It didn't really matter what position they are. And by the way, just our commissioner was one of the very first to do actually MFA. To set the example for the staff here at the agency, which we appreciate. So, but we are finding just human nature. They're a little dirty laundry that we have, but the last day that we have, there's always a pretty high percentage of people that haven't done it. And my words to those folks, I don't care who they are, if they don't do it, they can't get on. Doesn't matter, crying, screaming, jumping up and down, I don't care what it is, they had their opportunity. And so that's how we're operating. So human nature there is waiting till the last second. Given that, you know,
the ViewSonic just got delivered to receiving.
Well, what was that? Somebody just got receiving.
We got it. We got it there.
Okay. Yeah. Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We have a link there to it. I think it's almost Cybersecurity Awareness Hour every hour for us, given that education is the #1 target of cyber criminals, as we talked about last month. Any else thing we want to say about that, Bob?
Yeah, just real quick. If you look at that, you'll notice, and it's really good timing. The theme for this year's Cybersecurity Awareness Month is "See Yourself in Cyber," and that speaks to kind of what we've been talking about, and that is that it's not one person's job. It's something that we all kind of have to, you know, do. And the resources that are provided on that website are really good. They do their best to, as you say, Waffle House everything and make it appealing, or at least understandable by the average person. You don't have to have a degree in cybersecurity or anything like that. You don't have to, you know, have immersed yourself in it. But it's something that I hope every district can go out there and find something that might help them stem the tide or turn the tide in their district and get more folks on board. You know, we tried to provide a bunch of information as we started the MFA project, and reasons why we're doing this, and we provided like a one sheet that was supposed to go to superintendents and folks in leadership capacity to kind of help them understand exactly what direction we're going, why we're going there, and how important it is. And so, you know, that might be something that's worth calling up again if you've already been through the MFA process. But you want to kind of remind people, dig some of that stuff out and share it again. So thank you very much.
I know, Bob, there's like handful of districts that have done something with Homeland Security. There's a federal funding source, and we had a superintendent call me last week, make sure that it was legit. It is legit. There's a federal funding source that quite a bit of steps to it that it pays for 90%. Districts, you got to pay for 90%. You got to partner with someone internally. It's looked at overall at the state level, not here at KDE. It's in the mixture with other $3.6 million of everything that is going on in Kentucky way beyond education. So don't know what the odds are of that, but we have a handful of districts, and the stuff with Homeland Security is legit. It's a federal funding source that's out there.
That's right. And unfortunately, we're not able to do an enterprise grant application for that, and that's been the main question that's come up to me: is KDE doing this for all districts? And the answer is we couldn't, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and we would, but we couldn't. We think that'd be a pretty good thing to do. Yeah. I know we've gotten to the other side of our 2022 digital readiness report. And obviously that's going to be used in the upcoming legislative session and a lot of other types of things, and give you all feedback on just not where you're at, but where you're at in comparison to districts around you and the districts around the state. Marty, any kind of final words about that? I know we're getting some of the data and kind of doing some analysis of it already, but where are we at?
Yeah, just a quick couple mentions, David. We're in the phase right now where we've gone through that validation and cleansing portion, where our data stewards, which are all of our field staff team, work directly with you as EdTech leaders after you submitted. And we, some questions came up about, are we sure that from the last year to this year, this particular element makes sense? So there's a lot of storylines that have developed, which are super informative and helpful. And so we've passed through that validation stage, and we're packaging the data now so that we can publicly report it in our digital readiness application. We know that many districts use that application, whether it's digging into the people side and trying to understand the number of people that you have on your teams as opposed to other districts your size, the comparative analysis component that you use the public application for. So we're moving into that phase where that will be in production and will be available very soon. By the next webcast, we'll have a pretty good snapshot and analysis of some of the key elements that we always like to discuss. They're great conversation starters. And again, there's already been some mentions in Go Soapbox by EdTech leaders and our field staff that they're wonderful story starters and try to understand, the current landscape of digital readiness, not just on the stuff, but on the programmatic things and on the decisions that you're making that are tied to your education technology plans, that are also tied to all the feedback that go into how we work together statewide in partnership. So David, we're moving into that phase. That's exciting. That's a part of the year that we really get to pause for a moment and see where the next steps are. So those are the pieces and parts that drive our legislative conversations, our funding conversations, and so on. So thank you.
So we'll be spending time in November going through the analysis of that, and I was approached, so on funding by the leader of the Kentucky Association of School Superintendents that had discussion with our board chair Lou Young about making education technology funding a priority for the next major session on funding, which is 2024. So we got to get all those groups together. And obviously that counts on districts, making that a top priority. But this tells a story, but also I know districts have used this to say, look, this is what this district has. We don't have that. They're about our same size, same kind of demographics in order to get digital learning coaches, for example. I know it's been used successfully, even technicians. So it's definitely a tool, just not statewide, but you can use hopefully internally to tell that story. I appreciate the feedback we've gotten on that. Obviously, our next big wave of that would be our top 5 feedback, the top 5 things that we did well in the calendar year, did not do well or did not get to, and what should our goals be for the future calendar year. And so that'll be our next step of data collection. Obviously, we share that with you all. We use that for a variety of reasons, also to set the priority for our summit, but also to set the priority for our work for the following year. Our top priorities. And so it is an important piece of feedback that we get from all districts, and also we get it from all of our staff members. OET staff members provide that. And also I get that feedback from every KD office, just we're the provider for that as well. So next up, we spent a lot of time on this the last webcast about esports and technology, and thought I'd covered everything, Marty. And then a couple of days later, one of our districts reached out and says, you did a great job covering from all different angles, but there's a couple of things that went in particular around cyber safety, particularly with the Nintendo Switch that you didn't hit upon that needs further clarification. So there's two aspects when we're talking about this topic with esports and education technology. There's a cyber security that is, we spend a lot of time and energy on that and the requirements of that. And then there's another one called cyber safety. They help out each other, but they're different. And so the cyber safety is along with the 1999 law that we had here in Kentucky around cyber safety for students and K-12 adults, and then a 2000 federal law, CIPA, the Child Information Protection Act. So those are, once again, cybersecurity is one thing. We know from a Nintendo Switch perspective, it does not have the capabilities to run, at least on our cyber secure network. And so it leads to, well, what does it run on, and the hot spots and how that runs on. We'll just talk about that a little bit. But I want to make sure those are two separate type of items. So Marty, I'll turn it over to you. I know we're piloting this. We've had good discussions with Lee County, which I appreciate the Lee County team, the coach, the superintendent, and their CIO, John Proper, bringing it up to us.
Absolutely, David, and huge thanks to all of our districts who are continuing to work with us in partnership. This is an emerging space, obviously, and Dave, you're exactly right. There's a matrix that starts to develop when we think about all of the components that we want to wrap around in terms of digital citizenship, internet safety, cyber safety, and security. So that matrix that starts to develop, and we hope to continue to work with the Kentucky High School Athletics Association to work and with our district EdTech leaders to publish and have something to work from every year. But it's who owns the internet component, who owns the that connectivity component, who owns the device that's being used, and that device, that's a gaming console in some cases, and obviously that's what spurred the most recent conversation, the console device that was really never intended by Nintendo. They've been very public that it's not intended to be on an enterprise, highly sophisticated network. They never intended it to be used for an esports engagement. They've been very public about that. But as we work to understand who owns the connectivity, who owns the device, and then where is that application being played? Is it on campus or off campus? So all of those components kind of wrap into a lot of interesting scenarios, David, that we've been mentioning and working towards. And again, it's an emerging space, and thank you everyone for working with us. This week we have some additional work and testing going on. Dr. Sean Jackson is running point for us from a field staff perspective. Coincidentally, he's our computer science lead across the state. You all know him well. And as it turns out, a lot of our esport coaches are computer science folks and teachers. And so that's a great connection. We just wanted to mention and bring forward again that there's emerging work here. We hope to be able to share some additional information. We had some successes in ensuring that the browsing capabilities on those devices, those consoles, could be eliminated so that wasn't a concern. And that's non-trivial, certainly, but it's work that we all need to take into approach that, when we put devices in the hands of our kids, and we want to make sure that safety and security component is in place. And so we've had those successes. I do want to point out, and if you think about, and I'll grab another sport or activity that the Kentucky High School Athletic Association sanctions and sponsors. I'll just pick one random: football, for example. There are practices, there are scrimmages, and there are games. And we know that certainly at a practice, I could flip the team around and we could go across the field instead of down the field if we wanted to. And so there are less constraints in those practices than there are in a scrimmage. And then from a scrimmage to a game, there are more constraints. And so when we think about the field of play, what our team is helping and working with KHSAA on is doing a better job of documenting that field of play and getting to, when we move from a practice to a scrimmage to a game, and the partner that KHSAA has contracted with, which is PlayVS, we know that there are different interactions that have to happen and make sure. So we want to make sure that there's success all the way through. You want to make sure there's success all the way through as you're working with your esport coaches. And so a practice is different than a scrimmage and is different than a game. And so we're working towards that. So David, I hope hopefully we hit that. It's emerging, and we hope to have some additional share outs along with our EdTech leaders at the regional level. And thank you again for those who are working hand in hand with us.
And so if you hear a little whining noise, that is right outside my office here again. I guess this first time the heat's been on in the building. So Janice, if you can let the folks know again, I was really hoping they would repair this part by now, because it is very problematic in this kind of setting. So if you could report that again for them to do something about that. So that's not an issue with Teams. It's right outside the window here with our building. The heat seems to come and go. So the reason this, to circle back to this, talking about the matrix, it's a district-owned device and a K-12 provided internet service. So obviously your school buildings, that comes through Katie, the agency, through the internet hubs. For the Nintendo Switch, for example, obviously it does not play on our Kentucky K-12 internet service because of the cybersecurity problems. They're associated limitations really of the Nintendo Switch. And so you have to use hotspots. And so the question is, well, who's paying for that hotspot? Is it the school district? If it is school district, then whether it's on the school campus or off the school campus, there is the requirement to meet the state law and the federal law for the most part. Once again, if the Nintendo Switch is owned by the district or provided to them and it's their ownership, even if PlayVS gives it to them, it's ownership of the district, then that's a district-owned device. And it also applies to, I don't know how much PlayStations are used and Xboxes are used to play the game, but it comes down to, is it a district-owned or is it a personally owned? And then the internet service, who's paying for it? So for example, in the situation to where a student or parent is paying for the Nintendo Switch, and they're using, the student and parent is paying for their own hotspot and they're playing off the school campus, obviously none of those laws come into play. If it is a student-owned Switch and a student-owned hotspot that they're playing on a school campus, obviously much like your policies that you have for smartphones, where it's a student-owned smartphone and the student is using the internet service that the parent is paying for, then you may have some policies that are already in place by the district what they have to follow. But those two state laws do not come into play. They do come into play in this mixture. Is it a student-owned device, but it's being provided over a district-paid internet service? Then it comes into play. Or is it a district-owned Switch being played over a personally owned internet service? So when you have any one of those two coming into play that's district-owned, that's where we start having this conversation. And through the years, we've had to spend a lot of time and energy on this topic, going back to the beginning of the internet, on appropriate use of internet services. And the sexually explicit particularly came into play in 1999 with state law for both adults and students, and then the federal law for the Child Information Protection Act, Internet Protection Act came into play. So John Prophet was right, as I told his superintendent, to bring this up as a concern in the situation. So we're testing it, as Marty said, is they made all three of these devices, the Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and the PlayStation, so you can do searches. And so the key thing is, if it's district owned, is there a way that the student cannot do that search, but at the same time be able to play the game? And so that's what we're testing out. Ideally, PlayVS would find that out, and other folks that are doing that and be able to inform us of it. But we're having to really do this on our own to find out about it. But and we'll keep you informed of it. But I appreciate the Lee County team bringing it to our attention. But we spent some time and energy on it, which we have to. And all of you at some point dealt with someone going to some place on the internet they shouldn't have gone to, even though you probably can see 99% of the time. It was very intentional. You can see the 10, 20 steps they took to get to a certain spot, and it wasn't by accident. But that doesn't mean people are not upset that you got to deal with it. And obviously, I've had to deal with it with many times at the state level where a parent calls us complaining and not really contacting the district that their child got to something. They obviously, you can see through the steps that the child really tried to get to. It wasn't accidental for 99% of the time. But still, there's this why do you do something to try to stop this or slow this down? And this is where it comes into play with the Nintendo Switch, the Xbox, and the PlayStation.
And David, just as a reminder, and thankful that there's been a question and answer and resolution on, and as you pointed out, as this matrix develops of a lot of different components and strategies that if and when our districts, as we're providing devices and internet or internet, no longer differentiating between if it's on campus or off. And so in other words, we want to, and you pointed this out, but I wanted to emphasize that if we're providing internet hotspots on campus or off campus, we take the same approach. If we're providing devices in terms of cybersecurity and safety, whether it's on campus or off campus, we take the same approach. And so that's helpful to us as we move forward and strategize. Kelly, thank you for posting that blurb. There is an interesting, and that's why I use the word emerging, as the space develops and as games are added. We really hope that the partner, the contracted partner, continues to work with the Kentucky High School Athletic Association, for example, not announcing new games that are available unless the Kentucky High School Athletic Association has also understood that, approved that, and sanctioned that in terms of play. The field of play is absolutely what this conversation is all about, and making sure that the field of play is right, making sure that it is appropriate, and making sure that it works. Before a sport or athletic or event competition is placed in any other thing, the field of play is absolutely one of those requirements to make sure that it's right, make sure that the lines are right, make sure that the space is appropriate. And so that absolutely has to be there moving forward. And we also understand and we know that the contracted partner is also sending, we've had reports of sending devices directly to coaches and players to be used, and that's pushing the conversation forward quite a bit with the Kentucky Athletic Association, and so we understand that. So if you're not aware of that, then be aware of that and be ready for that if you have esport teams.
And even at Play VSNs, my understanding is those are property of the school district, not the individual student. But I'd also say I wonder how many parents are aware of the Google searching capability of all these devices. And I, to be honest, we have talked with X number, and they were not aware, for example, their Nintendo Switch, their child could go to different places, and it's easy. I mean, you can go on YouTube, and within 2 minutes, you got it configured, you can go there. So just an awareness issue. New topic, I'm appreciative of the seeing the Stillwell award that's happening throughout the state and on a regional basis and then on a district basis. Those are fun to watch. Your technology staffs be recognized as they should and appreciated for their great work during the pandemic. So thanks to you for sharing those pictures, and I'm really pleased that your staff is able to get a high five in front of their boards. It was, for example, Johnson County, I got to be part of that one. Obviously, most of you know I'm from Johnson County, and so that was fun to be able to recognize the Johnson County technology staff. I'll be in Floyd County, recognizing theirs as well. So that's a fun thing. This goes back in time. I'm so appreciative of the staff, both here in OET and our districts, of the going above and beyond the call of duty and just the quality of services during that pandemic time. So that's a simple way to say thanks. I think there was a question that we have here. Does the Lightspeed network agent not catch that traffic? So obviously it doesn't load on the Nintendo Switch, right? And it's not running. The Nintendo Switch is not running on our Kentucky K-12 internet service. for
David,
Nintendo Switch, for the Nintendo Switch running on a hotspot provided by the district. Obviously, there's hotspot services that you can get that do some internet content management filtering for sexually explicit. Is that right?
Yeah, and David, we will have, our team is working on some of those documentation details to point to when and where and how additional filtering can be implemented from a technology perspective. Obviously, we know our coaches are there with students, hopefully most of the time, and working from that perspective, from the people side part. But from a technology perspective, there are details that that we're working to document.
And obviously, if you're saying the device is home and they're school owned, and they're using school-owned internet, that's where this comes into play, because coaches aren't going to be there during that time.
That's right.
So once again, thank you for the recognition. Let's talk about Lexington Herald article. I'm going to try to be constructive during this portion the best I can. In 30 years of trying to get our two major newspapers to recognize that we've had our schools connected, I'm not able to get one sentence out of it in the 30 years that recognizes our schools all connected to the internet, which has been a problem. But I understand it's a good news story, so it's tough to get those there. But at the same time, when there's an article that was written last Friday, and they don't give a chance, the number one ask that you have of any really news media source is who they balance that information off of before they published it. And to give the Department of Education a shot at least educating them on a big part of what they are missing. And that's what came out on Friday. Unfortunately, it threw not only our Kentucky K-12 internet service under the bus, it identified 10 districts and threw them underneath the bus. So obviously our steps, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, show it is, we're going to talk with the editor. We're arranging a time to talk with the editor of the Lexington Herald Leader to discuss the processes they used before to really balance that off and confirm the accuracy of the information that they're publishing with another source before publishing it, which obviously they didn't do in this situation. We're also going to get with the Courier Journal to make sure they don't pick it up and use the same source that the Lexington Herald did. We're going to get with the source that the Lexington Herald used, called the Stacker, and educate them. But all these are money makers, so it's untelling, if that will stop it. But at least they'll be educated that they're wrong. I am concerned that your maybe local papers will pick it up because it's a juicy story that's out there. So let's talk about the story itself and the talking points to it. This is one of those that falls in the category no good deed goes unpunished. We are very frugal with and have been good stewards of taxpayer funds for the past 30 years. And take that very personally. And to make sure we're providing very effective and efficient services to our school districts. And to talk about the historic achievements we had with online testing during the pandemic, we're the national leader in cloud-based computing. You would not do that if the article talked about 165, 171 districts, have extremely slow internet. This is something that, as Phil knows, that we closely watch every month. And so what they picked up on, unfortunately, is this whole thing that started years ago by a national organization, was picked up by the FCC, and it's, to have 1 gig per student. And that's a worthy goal someday, but it's massive overkill in Kentucky. Per student. And we have empirical evidence, over many years of what we use. So we use about 1/3 of that. If the money was available, we could buy the other 2/3 and say we meet the national goal, but we wouldn't be good stewards of taxpayer funds because that other 2/3 would be sitting totally idle. So what we're able to do, and we, the part that I've tried to understand in other states, because if everybody's doing their own thing, you kind of get gouging, I think, by telecommunications providers, which is happening in other states, to where you have a lot of impurities in their internet service, which is causing their districts to use a whole lot more than is really what is needed. And so we have, in our internet design and approach statewide, eliminated a lot of impurities in the internet service and don't pay for those, therefore. And we're very efficient in what our design is. And so we only need 1/3 of the national goal. That doesn't mean we're behind. That doesn't mean we're our districts can't do X, Y, and Z, because you all can. Obviously, there would be screaming that if you couldn't. And obviously, we showed a chart a little while ago that showed, on the radar screen, bandwidth is 0% of a concern, really. So, I was trying to think of, and I'll share with you at least some of the talking points. This is in, draft form here of what we'll use with the Herald Leader. Just to remind them to maybe one time say that all of our districts are connected. Pretty historic that we did that in just 11 months back in 1995. We gradually are able to, with our internet service, bring up folks to what internet service they need. And you can see that's in the second bullet. We look at this as on an each month basis, which is once again being good stewards of taxpayer funds. We've done a steady increase over the past 30 years. We were the first state to meet the 100 kilobit per student, which was needed. That was a good national goal to have. And that's what we saw, across the state, what was needed. And someday we will be at that, need that, 100 kilobit per student service, but we don't need it now. Our services, as Phil has talked about in this next bullet, are up, 99.99% of the time. Like to get that 100% for everybody. And so we're going to send them a link to our historic achievements, which we've never had success of any paper, talking about any of those, unfortunately. And then just the question that we did, I didn't, when asking this, I didn't know it was going to be a big deal, but sharing this resource with them. And so shared it with our commissioner yesterday on our Kentucky Department of Education leadership team, so I could educate them on this topic. I asked Chuck Austin yesterday to get with the KEs of the 10 districts to make sure they were aware of it, that they had been, thrown under the bus unjustly, thrown under the bus, that I'd be willing to talk to their board chair, to their superintendent. You're not districts that are behind. You're just good, you're effective and efficient use of the bandwidth that you have. And it's really disappointing that an organization would run that without running. Obviously, Stacker is whoever this organization is they just grabbed their article and their services and ran off with that. So we'll be approaching Stacker, and I don't know the difference will be there. Obviously, the other major news source, Courier Journal, it is something that folks can't stay away from. It wouldn't have been any better, but they didn't run the top 10 that we had. They only focused on the bottom 10. It shows there was zero balance in it, just trying to create high drama about it. So apologize that we had one of our major newspapers that took that approach and put 10 of you in a really bad position, really 165, 171 in a bad spot. But we'll be addressing it the best way we can. So just once again, wish we get a positive note once in a while, or just once from either one of those newspapers. But this is what they do. Some of the good news is our CATS offer of assistance is out. Amy, is there anything else you'd like to say about what's going on with offer assistance?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Offers of assistance letters in the amount of $12 went out last Monday to approximately 143 districts and model labs. So we do remind districts to keep an eye on the district acceptance date, which is December the 9th. So there's several things that we need to be submitted in order to meet that acceptance date. Just make sure that you get the first offer on the local Board of Education meeting, because we will need an excerpt from the minutes reflecting board approval, whether they're accepting or escrowing it. Also, that first offer fund utilization planning form needs to be signed by the superintendent. And for those that are accepting and matching, you'll need a copy of your journal entry from Munis to demonstrate transfer of the funds. So again, kind of keep that date in mind of December 9th and make sure you work towards that and get these kind of on before your superintendent and your board in order to get those signed off and submitted in time. So.
Thanks. Okay. I saw a note by Jody, but where's the messenger? What is that paper? Is that? You were muted, Chuck. Who is that?
I'm assuming, is that the messenger inquiry, Jody, out of Owensboro?
Okay. So we're going to have to address this on multiple fronts. So what I'll probably do.
No, David, that's out of, it's out of Madisonville and Hopkins County.
Okay. Once again, it's so enticing. These media sources cannot, you can't get them to write, hey, listen, we're the top 10 in this, first to ever do this, but they'll jump all over that without balancing that at all. That is 10 levels of disappointing to, 30 years. And this is what these folks jump on.
David, it's also interesting, and we'll see it develop over the next several days and weeks, but leveraging the same inaccurate or incomplete data source. Stacker Media has also published the same article with different states, just kind of replacing the state name, and so other states are kind of working towards, what does that actually mean or not mean? Trying to unravel the inaccuracies, honestly.
Yeah, I remember talking with my peers, particularly the states that keep up with it statewide and provide a statewide internet service. 1 gig is massive overkill and waste, massive. And I don't know who would have that per student. It's an incredibly inefficient way, and to do the beat down and throw folks under the bus that are trying to be good stewards and really just supply what is needed. And then you have a media source that revs that up and is acting like someone is doing a poor job. So, we'll write up something. I thought I was going to have to just do the Courier Journal and Lexington Herald. Now I'm going to have to write up something that goes to all these media and news sources since they couldn't resist from picking it up. And something for you all to talk from as well. Because you may need to educate, just like I did yesterday, our commissioner and the rest of our C-level group, just to educate them on. This is something we should be given high fives for, being good stewards of taxpayer fund and very efficient of just asking for and using what we actually use versus having a bunch there just to meet a national goal and sit idle. We should be actually commended for that versus thrown under the bus for it. Any other newspapers are running that locally already?
That's an open-ended. David, I do think it's, and you said this, but again, to emphasize it maybe in a little different way. We've yet to have a recent issue where our districts do not have the capacity from a utilization perspective that's needed. We're very excited about that and happy with that approach, with our approach to ensure, and we're watching we from a strategic perspective, we're watching to ensure, and we have projections every year that look at districts who have increased utilizations based on the technologies that they're implementing, and we've achieved all of those needs year over year for the last decade. And then that's like you said, something to be celebrated as opposed to taking a media kind of spin to generate negativity.
Organizations like Stacker won't correct it. None of these folks are writing an article to correct it. It's let's say disappointing. Last item I have on here is just awareness for you with contracts that are out there. I'm not going to spend time on them, but just we got name changes on one, actually 2 of them. One of the contracts runs out that are used by districts for grants, and then we have our next generation internet service that's ongoing right now. All right. Anything else from anyone that we need to share? STLP. We had something with STLP.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted one more mention, David. Just take 30 seconds here. Regional registration is open until November 1st, so that's a huge push right now. Regional registration for STLP is open till November 1st, with the Level 1 Pitch Fest being all online November 16th, which we're extremely excited about. But for now, we need your help. We're looking for no sub judges. So these are folks, district folks maybe, who might not need a substitute teacher and can give us a morning of their time to hear project pitches directly from students. These are folks like digital learning coaches, CIOs, library media leaders, and et cetera. This will help us relieve some of the stress that we've heard loud and clear from our local building level STLP coaches in schools that are struggling with teacher retention already. We know that, we've talked about that, and finding substitute teachers to cover classrooms. So level 1 judging, it's easy, it's inspiring, it'll recharge your batteries. It's a great way to support our schools and demonstrate how we're going all in. That's our theme this year, all in for STLP state in 2023. So more information will come directly from our field staff, through our CATS engineers, and through our digital learning coach team about the regional meetups. And Jeff has already, or is getting ready to, drop a link directly in the chat for that registration, just to push on that a little bit. Thanks, David.
Thanks.
Hey, David, I want to mention too, there's a new data challenge, all about data, guys. And girls out there, we're trying to get data for action. So reach out to some of those math folks and folks like that maybe haven't been involved in STLP historically, and look for that challenge. It's online, but there will be a state opportunity to present too. So.
And that's a new STLP student challenge, Dee, that you and your team is leading, along with partnering with KY Stats, correct?
Right. And, we're going to utilize school report card and the KY Stat sites as data sources. So make people a little bit more aware of what data is out there and available to the public.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dee.
I appreciate some. I was just looking through the responses, the discussion questions that we have there. So thanks for providing those, along with the responses to Go Soapbox. All right. Well, thanks for joining us this morning, Chuck. Have a good the rest of the birthday. My wife's birthday is today too, so I'm going to be enjoying that with her as well. So
thanks again, David.
Have a good day. So I'll be staying on here just a while longer. So you can go ahead and turn it off for our folks that are watching by YouTube. Thanks for joining us, and I'll hang on here for a little bit of bonus time.